So it's that time of year again when us fans of the Transformers franchise and many other franchises get very excited. And why? Because of course it is time for the 2017 San Diego Comic-Con. And as of this recording, it is passing by. Depending on when you're watching this, maybe it has already passed by. And as usual, even those of us who were unable to attend were excited about the news to come and the reveals to come, and all of these figures were there on display. Every single one of them, really. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Not quite, because though all of these were on display, that is not the entire story. Stick around. We're going to do some reactions and have a little bit of discussion about everything that was seen at this year's SDCC in the latest GotBot True review. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Check out Machinery of Man and the Everything Factor. Have a look at Universal Collision, my stop motion series. Season 1 is up in full now. And spend some time on the channel. See what it is that catches your interest, and check me out everywhere. And like everyone, I was really excited about this time of year to come. I have it as a dream to one day be able to actually hit SDCC, but I've never been able to, though I have followed it extremely closely. And I want to try to do this, I guess, sort of in sections, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. All of this was on display there. All of this I have already reviewed on the channel. That doesn't mean that we didn't get reveals. We had a few, but I think there's more to that story, so I'll get to that in a little bit. Let's start off with RID. The Robots in Disguise line really didn't have the biggest of representations. We did see, Blue Bisque, what is his name? And now it is eluding me. Thermidor. We saw Thermidor on display. He looks nice. Again, I looked at Bisque in 212, episode 212, and I don't feel like I need that again, but hey, it is an excellent mold, a great figure. This guy was also on display. This is the new Bludgeon, and I looked at Bludgeon in full in episode 289, as was this guy. It is the new RID Twinferno. I looked at Twinferno in full in episode 290, and technically this guy. This is actually the white Toys R Us exclusive Power Surge edition, but it's this Power Surge Optimus Prime. I looked at this guy way back in episode 124 last year. So why was he on display again? Simple, because he is in the case assortment, as is Bumblebee, who was also on display. He's in the case assortment with Thermidor and Bludgeon and Twinferno. So that's where that's coming from. What else did we get from the RID line? Not a whole lot, to be honest with you. We saw the combiners, Menasor and Ultra B. We saw some of the Legion class figures. It was kind of cool to see the little Cyclonus. I think that should have been a deluxe. I really don't see the point of the Legion class figures, to be honest with you. They are so very small for, I feel like a price point that's a bit too high for them. I think that Legend is the best size for a small bot. Legion, I kind of don't see the point of it. But some people dig it, so you know what? If you dig it, then there was a lot of them on display. And of course, there were a lot of things like Crash Combiners on display. I feel like they were really kind of pushing the gimmick toys in that line, so it really didn't excite me that much. Okay, so let's move on to part 2, which is Transformers The Last Night. What was on display for The Last Night? Well, there was a couple of displays really done up for. There was the diorama, which looked pretty phenomenal, lit really well, painted really well, sculpted really well, looked great, and of course there were the toys. And first things first, they had the MPM B and Optimus Prime there. From what I can tell, they're already out. Certainly the B is. You know, we have him at retail now in these parts. Overpriced, but out at retail. So I guess I got that out of the way. I'm not that really impressed with it. But in the diorama itself, we saw Voyager Optimus. And I looked at Voyager Optimus in episode 272 in full. He's alright. We saw Grimlock. Now granted, this is the Age of Extinction version. So he's a little more colorful than the Last Night version. But we saw this guy in the diorama. I looked at him in episode 65. A long time ago. And actually compared him with some custom work that I did on the FOC version. Now, I think that this is a pretty decent toy, to be honest with you, but again, I look at it and I'm thinking, this is technically a 3-year-old toy, so I'm not that impressed about it really coming out. It doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't really excite me, I suppose. We also saw Squeaks. He was on display there. Squeaks was. I looked at Squeaks in full back in episode 281. We had Berserker on display, who I looked at in episode 260. The Deluxe B was on display. I never looked at him, never had the figure, but he has already been out for a while. Barricade was also on display. I looked at him in episode 261. Strafe, who's going to be coming out in Wave 3, was on display. I looked at Strafe in episode 67. This is technically my custom Age of Extinction Strafe, but it's the same thing, and even if I had the new Last Night version, I would still paint it that way. Same goes for Slug. This is the AOE version, but the Last Night version is the same thing. I would paint it in this color, and I looked at him in episode 68. Steelbane was in the diorama. Skeletron was also on display. I looked at Steelbane in full in episode 280, and apparently, for as bad as the looseness issues are on this guy, they're pretty bad. I used a lot of floor polish on his wings and on his hips. Apparently Skeletron is even worse. Buyer beware. That's all I can say there. And I have been super duper hard on the Last Night line. Slash, I guess I should mention as well. Slash was also there. I looked at Slash, and this is my custom Age of Extinction version, but I looked at Slash back in episode 70. Ever so long ago. Again, new paint scheme. To me, that doesn't really change things. I've been super duper hard on this line, and you know why? Because the fact is, it's just not very good. It's not. I'm just not impressed with this line. Hound was also on display, and I looked at Hound in episode 291, and to my shock and awe, this is the one figure from the Last Night line that I not only don't have any problems with, but I think is absolutely fantastic across the board. He is pretty much everything that could be right with a movie line toy. This should be the sort of template that they use for developing future movie toys if they want to make the line very, very good. The biggest things on display there at the show. Well, we did see Scorn. He wasn't at the breakfast pre-show thingy. I believe he was in the display. He certainly was in the diorama, if I'm not mistaken. So he wasn't really mentioned, but Scorn was there. We did see Infernicus. Infernicus, for all intents and purposes, is the Transformers Prime Abominus, who I looked at in full in episode 203. The only difference being that instead of the core of him being Hunger, it's a new molded core that I believe only changes between robot and torso mode. I don't think it has another mode. And I believe that will come with Quintessa. I did not see her there, although since then we have seen images of her released. She looks cool, beautiful sculpt, even if extremely tiny and clear. Cogman was on display. I still think he looks fantastic. I think he's going to be a standout like Hound, or so I am hoping. We saw the Leader Optimus and the Leader Megatron. I don't like either of them. I do not like either of them. I'm not a huge fan of this guy, but I think he's better than the Leader version, and I think that the Voyager Megatron, who, while I haven't reviewed him and I didn't buy him, I have seen him, I have handled him. He is absolutely fantastic as well, just like Hound. He is really excellent, and if you're only going to get one Megatron, go for the Voyager, because it is just that much better. Hot Rod was on display there. I said it before when I kind of done a bit of an overview that it's a modified version of Lockdown. He's a bit bigger. I think the arms are handled better for the transformation, but at the end of the day, if you didn't like Lockdown, you're really not going to be a fan of Hot Rod. If you did like Lockdown, I think you're going to like Hot Rod more. I think he does improve on the mold. Nitro was shown. I think Nitro looks so interesting, but I'm a bit concerned about what I've seen regarding his transformation. It just looks not fun. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't handled him. And besides that, we saw a bunch of Legion class figures again, and some one-step turbo changer thingies. Okay, alright, but I think the two real stars for that display would have been the repaint of this guy. This is Primus, repainted into Planet Cybertron. I think it looks better in hand than I've seen in the renders. I don't care what version of Cybertron you get. This, the 2010 version, or the new Last Night version. Everyone deserves to have, every fan deserves to have Cybertron in their collection. I got to believe. And it should be really a one-time purchase. Get it and forget it. I looked at this guy in full in episode 100 and all of his modes. I actually think there's 4 of them, though a couple of them are a bit wishy-washy. There's no doubt about it. And the other one was the Leader Class Dragonstorm, who I still think, with the texturing and the paint detail, I think a lot went into the development of him. It's 2 deluxes that go together. Of course it's not accurate because, as we know now from the movie, it should be 12, but I'll let it slide because, dang, he just looks so cool. I think I'm down for Dragonstorm. I got to say, it depends on the price point when he comes out. But I'm tempted. Highly, highly tempted. By the way, a lot of that stuff comes from the exclusives that are being offered, such as the Mission to Cybertron line, and of course, we all know about the Hot Rod exclusive. I talked about the various exclusives in episode 283. And in fact, I done an entire kind of overview and rant, you could say, about the Last Night line in episode 259. And the fact is, I'm hard on them because A, they're just not up to snuff, but B, and here's the important one, they are so overpriced. So overpriced. You cannot tell me, at least here in Canada this is the case, you cannot tell me that this Berserker is worth the same price of admission as this. This, of course, being... Oh! He fell on me. Why he doesn't... Oh, because I never had a knee straight. You cannot tell me that this Berserker, which is really a fiddly-paddly mess, is worth the exact same price as that Broadside. No, it's not. Broadside is a great figure. This is not. It is not worth the same price. And in Canada, they are going for the exact same price. Exact same. Somebody please explain the logic to me, because I'm just not getting it. I can't in good conscience tell people to buy this for that price. I just can't do it. And that's been the one problem with the last night line. Hound is fantastic, as is Megatron. As I think Dragonstorm will be. But I think all across the board, they're not worth regular retail price. Wait till they go on sale. Get them for what they should have been sold for, to begin with. Next we move on yet again, and we're going to take a break for a second before we move on to all of this. And I just want to talk about another couple of things that kind of popped up and were shown there or touched on or something. We saw the kind of top 3 for the Hall of Fame that will be decided on, I think September 8th is when the results come out. And right now for Toy of the Year, Trigger Happy, Trypticon, Topspin, in that order. I'm not shocked in the least. Trigger Happy is everything right. In fact, he was on display. Let me grab him. He was on display at the show. I looked at him a long time ago, though, back in episode 225 at the end of January. So these have been out a long time, but there have been issues with him being misassembled, especially in the arms, or at least regarding the blasters on his arms. But if you get one that's not, this thing is absolutely perfect. It is everything right. It has an interesting transformation, great articulation, and excellent paint. The same thing can be said for, and I'll get him as well, Topspin. Another one that, from Wave 4, that is absolutely fantastic. One of the most glorious head sculpts, certainly eye paint, that I've seen in ages. This was also on display. What I found interesting was that in everything I've seen, I did not see Twin Twist on display. Now I looked at Topspin in full back in episode 253, and I just looked at Twin Twist in episode 293, if I'm not mistaken. Again, Topspin would have been back in April for me. I'd like to say I'm confused as to why those two would be shown at the show. But A, they are both up for Toy of the Year. But I think that there's another reason, and I'm going to get to that other reason toward the end of looking at all this. For favorite movie character, we have Optimus, Hound, and Barricade. Actually, I should put it this way. We have Barricade, Hound, and Optimus in that order. Honestly, I feel like the go-to is always, oh, the first one in the Hall of Fame is going to be Optimus. But no, you know what? Let's make it Barricade. I don't know if we ever get a chance to vote again or not. I certainly voted when the opportunity came up. But I think Barricade should get in. Start off with a Decepticon, especially a Decepticon in the movie franchise that has actually managed to live and is not named Megatron. Yeah, put that guy in the Hall of Fame. And then the one that sort of confounds me a bit is favorite character. And in order, it's Black Arachnia, Galvatron, and Cyclonus. First, I thought Galvatron was already in the Hall of Fame. My mistake. I personally voted for Cyclonus. I'd love to see him go in. I love Cyclonus. But number one in the running is Black Arachnia. Very interesting. She would be a great pick, and I certainly think that she's a character that really stands out and is extremely memorable, was voiced very, very well, given excellent characterization and dialogue, but I'm surprised that she's kind of number one in the running. Maybe that says something about kind of the nostalgia for Beast Wars starting to rear up a little bit more. We had no announcements of any new MPs. I'd like to say that that surprises me, but it really doesn't surprise me because the movie line is what's being pushed and pushed and pushed right now. And if you're going to have announcements of MPs, right now it's going to be that Optimus and that Bee from the MP movie line. Just to touch on something else here, we have also had word of the tribute pack being released with the Fall of Cybertron Optimus and the Orion packs, which comes from the Cup mold. And I'll get to Cup in a little bit. I think that's a really interesting one. I don't have it. I don't have a need for it. I don't really care about Orion packs. Between me and the Scraplets, we already have that FOC Optimus twice. We don't need it a third time. But if you don't have either of those, honestly, I would say that they're both really great toys and probably worth the pickup if you can get them at a really good price. And I've heard of them going for an exceptionally good price for 2 Deluxes. So it might be worth the pickup if you've been on the fence about it. Okay. Oh, and I wanted to just mention before we go on again to the Generations line here, I wanted to mention that there were a lot of questions asked during the panel about things to come and whatnot, and I felt like a lot of the answers were non-committal. It was just stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned. And even when it was asked about, are we going to get the missing combiners, which I think everybody knows would be Abominus and Predaking. What was the answer? We hear you, stay tuned. And there might actually be hope for getting them yet. And I'll explain that when we get into this Generations line. But I think that there's actually hope that we might get them yet. And they said that they are aware of the Trypticon hip issue, which means it's widespread enough, folks, that you're going to want to be careful with yours. Maybe its results will vary. Maybe you'll luck out and you won't have the overly tight ratchets. My suggestion would be, if you move it once or twice and feel like, ugh, this is way too tight, do yourself a favor. Do the mod, do the fix that's been going around. And I think you'll be a lot happier in the long run because you won't kind of wreck the ratchets. I do think that they will adjust that spring in second, third releases, you know, that end up coming as restocks. I'm figuring that will be a kind of a first run type of issue, sort of like we had with the Voyager class Motormaster when he was released later. That ratcheting system in his hips was fixed. I think that we're going to see something very similar here with Trypticon. Though I'm not going to lie, I'm really excited to get my hands on that guy. Have not got him yet. Okay, let's jump into Generations. What did we see? Well, we did see Broadside, who I looked at in full in episode 247, including how to do an alternate plane configuration. He's a great toy, but again, I've had him since March, I think. We saw Sabak, or Leon, if you will. I looked at Sabak, Leon, back in episode... What episode was that? That would have been episode 245, a long, long time ago. I like this one. I do. I sort of really dig this you know, this little guy. And I'm not really into the Titan Masters at all, but I really do dig him because he's supposed to be a junior. He's supposed to be small, so I can buy it. We also saw, I already mentioned Trigger Happy. We also saw on display Sixshot, who I looked at in episode 218 back in December, before Christmas holidays. I got this guy around, December 18th, I think it was, something like that. Why Sixshot was on display now, again, I have a theory. I'd like to say it's beyond me, but I don't. I actually have a theory the more that I've thought about it. Fantastic figure. You can go back and check out episode 218. Beyond that, we had this guy on display. This, of course, being Sky Shadow, or Black Shadow, if you will. Overlord was also on display. I'm aching to get my hands on him too, because this is a fantastic toy as well. I looked at this guy in full in episode 256, and I said it there, and I'm going to say it again. It is the one time that I can honestly say that I have gotten a figure and that I was going to pass over. I got him for my birthday from Starscream Girlfriend, actually. And I was going to pass him over. I'm so glad that she thought better and got him for me, because he's fantastic. And it's the one time that I've gotten a figure and I'm excited to get a reuse of it. Actually excited to get a reuse of it. It's that good. Or at least in my opinion it is. Take it for what it's worth. Na was on display. I looked at Na and the custom paint that I did on him in episode, what episode did I look at Na in? 265 is where I kind of, took a look at everything to do with this little guy. Fantastic. Well, no, you know what? Nah, I take that back. Pretty good figure. A lot of people thought this should be up for Figure of the Year. No, he's not that good. He's not, and I don't understand why anyone needs 12 or 13 or 15 copies of him. I have 3. A nice little squad. I think that's plenty. And I griped about before, I think I did it maybe way back, when I did a bit of a rant about Toy Fair. Maybe it was during that rant. I'm not even 100% sure about that. And I'd done that rant in episode 239, by the way. But this guy is one that I really like, and I think every fan should have the opportunity to have. And that's why now, even when I see him very, very rarely, I might add, and we're going to touch on that again in just a little bit, but when I see him now, I have my 3. I can't in good conscience buy more of him up when he's so very difficult to come by. And I know, at least around here, so many people who would love to have him and have not had a chance to get him yet. So I try to help out, where I can by pointing that stuff out. We also have, though I don't have him on the table, though I'm going to get him, we also have on display a guy that I looked at in episode 270, that being this guy Braun. Love him. A couple of slight paint apps I added to him here, but fantastic figure. He was on display. Roadburn, he was on display. I like him. It's nice to have a bee that's, a bee body that was painted red and didn't become Cliffjumper. And B was on display. I did some custom paint apps on him. Actually, the yellow was coming off of his arms because of where they peg in. The solution that I found, honestly, was to get a gloss yellow. And I find that that is far more durable for transforming this guy because of where the pegs go. I haven't had anything rub off of him since. And I looked at Roadburn in episode 269. I looked at B in episode 257. You'll notice that as I'm saying this, there are reviews here all over the place. Twinferno, oddly, was on display. I saw him. I looked at him in episode 224 back in January of 2017. Cup was also on display. This is my custom cup. I looked at Cup in full in episode 250. I looked at some updated work and kind of this final view of him, and I'll just show it here a bit closer. this works for me. I looked at this in full in episode 262 as an update, and Perceptor, who I also did, oh, sorry, I had a little bit of a minor malfunction there. I looked at Cup in episode 262 and everything I did with him, and this guy, Perceptor, who I also did a few custom paint apps on. What I find really interesting is I have since seen pictures of the Takara release of this guy, and outside of the fact I put silver up here around the lens, their paint scheme is pretty much exactly what I did here. So I must have been doing something right. I looked at this guy in full in episode 254. Of course, the update in 262. Again, I love that Perceptor so much more than that atrocious RTS thing. So what's been shown off so far has been good toys. We saw Croc on display from Wave 4. I looked at Croc in full in episode 251. We saw Windblade on display. I looked at Windblade in full very recently in episode 294. We saw, if I can grab him, Misfire on display, who I looked at in full in episode 292. Another fantastic toy. I did touch up his eyes red. Quake was on display there. Again, another fantastic entry. I looked at Quake in episode 252. If I didn't say Croc was 251. I mean, it's been so much. Cosmos was on display. The Titans Return Cosmos. This guy is, okay, admittedly this is the Generations version, and I'll say this, the real only difference between the two is the yellow is continued in his arm. I plan to kind of touch mine up yellow now that I have a better yellow, so I'm not going to be buying the new Titans Return one, and his Autobot symbol is a bit smaller. The new one looks to be more of the color scheme of the Japanese release, which I think is pretty fantastic. Again, I have this mold twice already, for him and for Scrounge. I don't see a need to get it another time. If you want to check out the mold and see what it's like, I looked at him in full in episode 146 along with his little Target Master partner Payload. The new one isn't coming with Payload, but it's still such a terrific toy. This really is a great toy. I don't think they need to do a new Cosmos mold, because guess what? You're not really going to do it any better. This was on display, technically. Kickback was on display. This is my custom Kickback, who I painted to look more animation accurate. And I looked at Kickback in full in episode 258. That takes care of Kickback, that takes care of Cosmos. So very much. And of course, the clones were on display. Now this is actually Fast Clash, or Fast Lane if you will. I looked at the entire Chaos on Velocitron set in episode 275. I do have the clones en route. Hopefully they'll get here relatively soon. Of course, that means it's going to leave me needing a pounce. But I'm going to take a look at those guys and kind of discuss that issue a little bit more at the time. So we'll take him out of it. And what does that leave us with? Well, that leaves us with new reveals, which is why I have him, and technically this guy here. Now, Hot Rod was on display at the show. And I looked at this Hot Rod a long time ago, somewhere around, let's see, it was episode 222 is when I looked at this Hot Rod. This is, sorry, 227. 227, that was Hot Rod. At the time I had painted his shins silver. I've since done them in a gray. But the long story short is this. While I did custom apps on this guy, and I like him, and while some people have opted to use the Rodimus Titan Master that came in the Chaos and Velocitron set. None of that really fit the bill for a new Rodimus Prime. And now let's get into the reveals for the Generations line. Okay, first things first, we're going to talk about the Hot Rod Rodimus thing. A brand new, actually I guess before we do that we should sort of talk about the line. We're moving into the third part of the Prime Wars trilogy. This is going to be Power of the Primes, and the idea is that there are going to be Prime Masters, 12 of them, and these 12 Prime Masters are technically the sparks of Primes, and when they connect to bigger bodies, they, I guess, bring their powers to those bodies, I suppose. I'd hoped we were actually going to get, you know, some, say, Deluxe, Voyager, Leader, you know, Prime characters from the lineage. My fear now is that all 12 of these are just going to be little Prime Masters. And what is a Prime Master, you might ask? It's Titan Master. That's what it is. It's a Titan Master renamed a Prime Master. I don't want 12 of those. I really don't. Now I will say this, and I will give a little bit of credit where it's due. Rather than coming with the dinky little vehicles that the Titan Masters have come with, it looks like now they're going to come with decoy suits. What are decoy suits? They're pretenders! Pretenders! I'm sure that the fans that have been aching for Pretenders to be revisited are so very disappointed that this is all we're getting. But I can understand why this is all we're getting, because Pretenders are difficult to do. You need to spend, you know, the cost of molding and producing the shell, plus the figure inside the shell. It's going to make the cost, for example, of a Deluxe be quite expensive. And the only one that we've seen so far is the Prime Master Liege Maximo. Now I am digging the fact that we're finally getting a Liege Maximo. It's too bad there's just a head. The head, however, when you open it out into the robot, looks like the inner robot of Skullgrin, and the little, I guess, thing, you know, vehicle that the Prime Master, Titan Master could go into is actually the Skullgrin Pretender shell. I absolutely, positively dig it. I think that's a cool concept. And the Pretender shell can transform, in this case, to some weird tractor thing. And it's a good looking rendition of Skullgrin for the way he looked in G1. By the way, if you're curious about Skullgrin, I actually looked at the vintage G1 Skullgrin very recently in episode 285. And if you look at the inner robot there, and the paint scheme used on him, and you look at the Liege Maximo Prime Master, it's the same. If you look at the paint scheme on the G1 there, and you look at the, I guess the Pretender decoy suit shell thing, it's really, really close. It's really good. So I do dig that. I do wish that if Pretenders were going to be revisited, they could have been revisited a little more effectively. For me personally, I'm not excited about that. I think it's neat in concept. I think it's cool that we are getting a nod to Pretenders. But if I was to choose a Skullgrin to get, I think I would still stick with that Deluxe Class 1 from a few years back. But something that we can get for the Liege Maximo, hey, if you can find the right body to put that head on, you might finally be able to have a Liege Maximo figure. That would be really cool, and I might look into it. Then we get, I guess, mention of the fact that the next Matrix bearer is going to be Optimus Primal, and he's a placeholder for Power of the Primes. But there was nothing announced at all. So did that mean anything? Are we actually going to get a new toy? Maybe. And this brings me to Rodimus Prime. I said that this guy was on display, which is fine. But so was another Deluxe Hot Rod, the one that combines with his trailer to become Rodimus Prime and power up. I mentioned the 12 Prime Masters, and I mentioned how they connect with bigger bodies. I think in concept what they're doing with the leader class size is going to be really, really cool. The idea is you have a deluxe class sized figure that will be able to combine with their trailer to become powered up as a Prime. And they're all going to come with their own matrix, and the little Prime Master will be able to connect to the core of the matrix, I guess, to power it. I think that's really cool in concept. I don't know how it's going to work in execution. My take on it is, when we're talking about Rodimus Prime here, is very similar to the Classics Rodimus with that third-party protector armor kit, making him into Rodimus Prime. I think it's along that concept. And in looking at the figure, I think that Hot Rod, that Deluxe Hot Rod, looks more boxy than this. I don't really like it. The Rodimus. Okay, I'm not exactly sure, of course, yet how the Deluxe Hot Rod connects, but it looks like the legs of the smaller figure will become the shoulders and maybe the upper arms of the larger figure. I'm not sure how the thighs, being the clavicle shoulder, is really going to work. I don't know if that's going to be too kind of loose and fiddly. In looking at that Rodimus, he looks great, but I think that leader class for those faction leaders, I think it's too big. I reserve leader class for bigger bots like Ultra Magnus, like Skyfire. Is Rodimus Prime the same size as Ultra Magnus now? I think a Voyager would be the way to go. But here's the thing. We have a decent deluxe, a couple of decent deluxes. We're now going to have a leader class. We have a Titan Master. A couple of years ago in Combiner Wars we got a Legends. The only size class for a Rodimus Prime that's missing is Voyager. And I gotta believe that that's going to be around the corner. I'm certainly hoping it is. I'm certainly hoping that we're going to get something happen, kind of like we had happen in Titan's Return, where Power Master Optimus Prime came out in Wave 1, I do believe, and then in the Wave 3 Voyagers we got another rendition of Optimus Prime. I'm hoping that the same sort of thing happens with Rodimus. I know that fans are jacked for that, and I get it. Hey, I'm right there with you. I get it. We need a new Rodimus Prime. I don't think that this is the one for me personally. Plus the backpack jack, that thing is just horrendous and atrocious and huge and every bit as obnoxious as the backpack of the Age of Extinction Last Night Optimus Prime. It's just there, folded up junk, and I think it's going to affect the articulation of the legs to go backwards. Here's what I am really curious about, to see what other entries come in that leader class size that I might be in for, and how well do the connection between the smaller figure and the trailer work. I could believe that it might work well, because they've been pretty successful in the past with connections. Deluxe class Starscream. Okay. I'm not excited for it. Maybe you are. I think the proportions look weird. But there's more to that story than meets the eye, if you'll pardon the pun. And I'll get to that in a few minutes too. We saw Deluxe Class Jazz, who seems to have a combiner peg, interestingly. But I think the Jazz looks alright, even though something is sort of off about it. Like, it seems like a hybrid between sort of a G1 style, with, to me, it seems like hints of maybe an animated style. Or at least that's how it feels to me. Let me know what you think. We have two more Deluxes. A retool of Air Raid here, being, what is it? Dark Wing, Black Wing, something like that. And Skydive. being remolded. Anyway, they will both be able to combine together to make Dreadwing, the larger Dreadwing, which I think is really cool. We have Titan Masters becoming Prime Masters, and it seems like we have the idea of combiners sort of coming back, because that Jazz seems to have a combiner peg, as do these two. And I don't know if it's to combine with each other or not. There's a part of me thinking it's not. Why? Because that Starscream, big reveal here, seems to be a torso, a combiner torso, which a lot of people say explains the larger limbs, because they're going to have to fold up in such a way to make a solid torso. The defense seems to be that on the inner forearms of that Starscream, though they sort of tried to hide it, there seem to be ports for combiner pegs to go into. I'll be really interested to see what comes from that down the line. We saw finally Legends class Beachcomber. I love Beachcomber. Is it weird that my favorite reveal of SDCC is Beachcomber? My absolute favorite reveal. Second only to Beachcomber is we actually saw, in hand, the end of the Titans Return line being Slugslinger. So Slugslinger and Beachcomber were my two favorite picks for the whole thing. We might have hope for combiners, because we're seeing the combiner technology used again here. We're seeing it used in Starscream. We're even seeing it used with the leader classes in a different way. My guess is it probably goes together something along the lines of Ginrai and the God Bomber armor. I think it's going to go together something like that for the leader class figures. I really do. That's not saying that it's going to be as big as God Bomber or God Ginrai. No, I don't think that, because you're going to be starting out with a deluxe figure. But I think that they're probably taking cues from it. What does that mean? That might mean that we could finally get molds used for Abominus and Predaking. My only fear is that some people have hinted that they'd like to have a Titan class Predaking. I think that's too big for Predaking. Look how big Devastator was. And a lot of people justified it by saying, hey, they're construction vehicles, they would be huge. Okay, I'll give you that. But would animals be that huge? I don't know. For me, I don't want him that big. I want him to match with my other combiners. And if he's that big, I don't think I'm in for him, because I think it's too large, personally speaking. If they're going to do the next Titan class toy, I'm hoping it's going to be either Omega Supreme or Scorponok. I think that's the only two that really make sense at that price point. We've also seen leaked mysteriously since these reveals. By the way, I should mention this. I looked at Air Raid here in episode 36 a long time ago, and I looked at Skydive in episode 35 a long time ago, if you want a refresher on those molds before we get the new releases. Here's my kind of final analysis here. Why are you not standing up? The SDCC display had a lot of stuff that we already know, that we've already seen, that we've already covered on the channel. But they're fantastic toys, and if you don't have them yet, you should really get them. I think that they were shown because whether Hasbro admits it or not, I think that they're aware that the distribution for waves 3, 4, and 5 have been lackluster, with them showing up in the oddest of locations at the oddest of times and still trickling out. Because I still hear people saying, I haven't seen Brawn, I haven't seen Roadburn, I don't have a Perceptor, I saw Cupped once. I still haven't seen a Trigger Happy, which confounds me. Wave 5 is only, of course, hitting places now. But I think that they were just set up there because they know that there are fans out there who still don't have them. So they're giving them a kind of an extra push. Since all of these reveals took place, we got two more mysterious reveals. One was a collector card of a Titans Return Headmaster RC version that looks to have some remolding, but basically reusing the Blur mold. I love the Generations RC. I absolutely love her. I think that she is a thing of beauty. I really do. But I also understand that, you know, she did eventually become a headmaster, and her headmaster was Daniel, who oddly on the whole cereal box art thing, there was a Titan Master there named Lenad, which is Daniel backwards. So I kind of think that there might be some credence to it. She might come out in Wave 6, but it hasn't been officially announced. By the way, I looked at the Generations RC way back in episode 76. I absolutely love her. I don't know if I would be in for the Blur mold again, but if you didn't get the Generations RC, I think that this is a great option for you to possibly get. And I think it's wonderful that we would have two versions of her, both of which are good because that Blur mold is pretty great. Even though it's kind of getting overused now. And we had another reveal of a Titan Master collector card being Ultra Magnus, and it's the white it's the white cab truck version. It looks like there's a face on his back. It's been speculated that these two were supposed to be part of box sets that aren't coming to fruition, or at least not coming to fruition now. Here's what I think. I think that at SDCC they showed a lot of these older toys because A, not only are they being slow to trickle out, but B, they needed something to fill the shelves without revealing their hand too much. I think that they specifically tried to not draw attention to what appears to be a combiner gimmick in Starscream. I think they tried to not draw attention to the combiner peg in Jazz and in the two Decepticons. And I think they tried not to draw too much attention to how, when it comes to the leaders, a Deluxe is going to combine with something larger. In my final analysis, it's not that I was disappointed with the displays and the reveals at SDCC. I wasn't, but I was very underwhelmed. And of course you had Trypticon there on display too, who I don't have yet, unfortunately. I was underwhelmed. I expected to see something more and something more interesting and new, and that's not what we saw. Maybe that's okay though, because I firmly believe, and I expected it going into SDCC this year. Everyone was excited about the reveals, and I said, I don't know if we're going to see a lot. Why? Because I gotta believe that the biggest things are being saved for September at the first ever HasCon. This whole thing was just meant to kind of wet our whistle for what's to come. And I would say strap in, hold on to your boots, and watch out come HasCon. And if I'm wrong, when I do a reaction like this to that, well, we'll talk about it then. Anyway, let me know what you think of the reveals. And if you liked it, if you were overwhelmed, underwhelmed, you know, if you were happy with it or what. You know, I always love to hear from you guys. And as always, I appreciate you for dropping by, giving me some of your valuable time. I hope that I've informed you some if you haven't been following the coverage quite as closely as I have. And I certainly look forward to the next time that you and I get together for another visit right here inside the videos.